Good evening and welcome to Sunday Politics and Trust TV. I am Shafiu Suleiman. Tonight, we examine growing public concerns over the Tinubu administration push for new taxes, despite worsening cost of living crisis. Although the government has suspended a planned 5% fuel surcharge, many Nigerians say multiple taxes are squeezing households and businesses. We also look at President Bala Tinubu's directive to the Federal Executive Council to crash food prices nationwide. While some hail it as a relief measure, others say they have questioned the logic and, of course, the execution of the policy. On Sunday Politics tonight, we ask, are these policies necessary or misplaced in the face of mounting criticism? With us in the studio is Bala Ibrahim, the Director of Publicity of the All Progressives Party, All Progressives Congress, the APC. Thank you for stopping by.
Thank you, Shafiu, for having me.
Despite the obvious challenges, the rains and of course the weather and all of that, we appreciate your coming.
And the short notice.
The short notice.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. And viewers, you also have the opportunity to call in midway and share your thoughts on our major talking points. So let's go straight into the conversation. Let's start with the first one, the issue of taxes and so on. Since the coming of this administration, Nigerians have witnessed quite a number of some of these taxes that were introduced by the APC-led Tinubu administration. That is, in spite of other measures, or rather despite other measures taken, we'll come to them. The subsidy removal and other subsidies that were also taken away. While Nigerians grapple with that, the government is also considering a number of taxes. The recent one, talking about the 5% fuel surcharge, which has been suspended. But let me get your perception or your worries over some of this developments as a party man and of course as a spokesperson of the government government party over time. What do you make up of this? How do you find it? Do you find it easy perhaps to confront Nigeria and say, hey, these are the reasons why we're doing XYZ?
Well, thank you very much. As a spokesman, the task of talking to the people, particularly with regards to the program and ambition of the party, is a tax which is not easy to pay. But then you have to do it as a duty because the citizens are entitled to information, and they need to be told. And in the dissemination of this information, you should do what it takes to give them the truth, the whole truth if you can, and not distorted information. Now, certainly, if you have that task, it's not something you will say it's easy to discharge. And the challenge is two-way. One, you have the challenge of explaining to the people what the party stands for. And you also have the challenge of talking to your colleagues like you, who will call me at short notice and say, please, can you come to the studio? Right. And certainly as a colleague and a journalist, I know what it means to plan a program and you have an empty studio. Right. So I try as much as possible to honor invitations, even if what will transpire may not necessarily be palatable to me. Right. Now, with regards what the government is doing on tax, I think we first of all need to understand the dictionary meaning of tax. Tax is actually money or resources collected from the people by the government with a view to discharging or rendering services to the people. Now, this tax or levy is something people may not want to give unless and until they are sure that the money will be judiciously used to their benefit and in a way and manner that will ginger the economy to provide for them much more than what they have given, and let them see a brighter future in the sky, in the horizon. And a government that has come with a reform agenda, a government that has come with the ambition of taking people out of the woods, a government that has come with the intention of taking the country to the Waterloo, is certainly going to embark on serious tax collection so that its plan can be fulfilled, it can be able to do for the people that which they want done, and in doing so, ginger or inspire the economy to produce more. So this is a reform ambitious government, and coming from a person who is not just a politician but a businessman, certainly we should expect what he is doing to be in line with the ambition of capitalism.
Okay, perhaps maybe Nigerians will also add the fact that he's also a tax collector, just like, you talk about, because some are beginning to tag the government a tax collecting government, going by the number of, taxes that have been introduced. Let's look at them one after the other. You're talking about, the reason behind some of this. Many understand the fact that, successive governments all over the world, collect taxes. Developed climes, taxes are meant, to be collected for the development of the societies. And but what Nigerians find a bit strange, or rather, that they don't see correlate with what is happening elsewhere, is one thing you mentioned: judicious utilization of some of those, levies or taxes that are being collected. In recent times, the government has introduced quite a number of taxes, or remove subsidies where it is paying to subsidize the poor. We've seen that of the petrol, for instance, how it translates into cost of living crisis in the country and so on. Again, followed by the electricity tax, subsidy removal, and others that followed. Looking at the quantum and amount of money that has accrued to the government in the last 2.5 years or more, would you say, going by what is on ground, Nigerians should have that sense of confidence that these monies that are being generated are judiciously utilized?
Well, I think so. I think the money generated is judiciously used, in the sense that we are beginning to see changes in areas that hitherto were comatose, or before now, things were functioning in the reverse. Now we are beginning to see improvement in power supply, contrary to what obtains in the past. We are beginning to see improvement in roads and rural infrastructure, contrary to what obtains in the past. We are beginning to see improvement in security. Able to give some
statistics, because if you talk about power, for instance, just recently, a couple of hours, 2 days or so, the national grid still collapsed, and quite a number of people want to believe that this grid collapses has become synonymous with our power generating and supply systems. And then you're also talking about the infrastructure. Yes, quite a number are on paper. You talk about the coastal highway, the Lagos, Sokoto, Badagry, and all of that, and quite a number of but there hasn't been, delivery, so to speak. We haven't seen any road commission in the last 2.5 years or so. How would you justify this?
Yes, we've had a number of grid collapses in recent times. But if truth must be told, we've also have a corresponding increase in the trajectory of power supply in the country, contrary to what we used to have when the grid was not collapsing. Yes, time was when the grid was not collapsing, but then the grid was not supplying anything. Now the grid is collapsing, but not at the same proportion or ratio to the power that is being supplied. Yes, we've had about 5, 6, 7, or 8 grid collapses. But if you look at the trajectory of power supply, you will see that from the coming of this administration that is seen to be witnessing the grid collapse. The increase in power supply is so high that one will begin to wonder whether actually is the same Nigeria that we used to live in 10, 15 years back. You see, the chef or the person in the kitchen who makes the omelette is burdened by the problem of having to break eggs. You just got to break eggs before you make omelette. Now, if you are introducing changes, and you are introducing these changes with the intention of improving the living condition of the people, there are times when you must press where it will pinch. There are times when you will press where it will pain. There are moments when you will take decisions that may not necessarily go down well with the people, but in the plan to improve, you may injure or offend some people. If you inherit a system of power supply that is archaic, that is old-fashioned, that is completely analog, and you want to transform it into a digital or improved power supply system, you will be burdened by the problem of having to cut here, dislodge there, remove here, and sometimes when you rearrange these things, they may not necessarily go down in the same way you want them to sit. Now, but these grid collapses, there are wake-up calls, there are challenges that are coming and making the engineers and those saddled with the responsibility of improving our power to open their eyes and see where the problem lies. And when they see these problems, they take measures that will probably bring a permanent solution. So we have not gotten to the stage where we'll say there will be no more grid collapse, but we have certainly passed the place where when the grid collapsed, it remained collapsed for days, for weeks, or months. No time had we had a grid collapse that has not been addressed within 48 hours. So it means these challenges are being addressed and addressed drastically in a way and manner that the system needs to get better.
Yeah, you brought the analogy of a chef, when having to break the eggs and the omelette and so on. Now, looking at the target, because quite a number of Nigerians are worried. Why are these reforms rather, and of course, the taxes or the revenue generation target only targeting the poor, for instance? Take a look at what has been happening. You talked about improvement in power supply, but it comes at a cost, or rather, it's coming at a cost, because looking at those within the band A and B, they would also have to contend with increase in tariff. Over 15% of Nigerians who are on these categories are paying, multiple what they were paying before. That's one. Yet businesses cannot survive. Quite a number of them are folding up because they cannot even survive, looking at the amount they have to, cop up. Again, petrol subsidy removal largely affects the ordinary people who rely on on public transportation and all of that. We haven't seen corresponding sacrifice on the part of those in government. I was coming from, I went to Kaduna recently, and I saw, a governor who is to commission, a particular road project, within the city center. And if you see the number of vehicles in that fleet, if I'm not mistaken, you can find up to 25 to 30 vehicles, SUVs, being driven, And all of this is taxpayers' money, for instance, to buy fuel and all of that. We haven't seen a reduction in terms of cost of governance, for instance, but Nigerians were meant to, to shoulder the responsibility of paying more for transportation, for electricity. Can you see there's justification in what the government is doing?
Well, I agree with you that yes, indeed, the cost of governance in Nigeria is very high, real high. But then we have to look at what the government at the center is doing to cut down on this cost of governance. We have to look at what the federal government is doing to discourage this extravaganza. We have to look at what the government is doing to raise the consciousness of the people, to hold their governors accountable because of the quantum of money being pushed to them by the federal government. And the president keeps telling the people, hold your governors accountable, because after the removal of subsidy, now the amount of money that is pumped to the state is almost triple what they were getting before the removal of subsidy. Now, it is not the duty of the party to tell every governor whether or not he is in the fold of the APC how to govern and how to cut extravaganza. But the party, as a matter of...
what is also reflective at the center, because you also see ministers and all of that moving around in such SUVs.
Yes, I agree. Like I said, yes, the cost of governance is high. And this government is frowning, is doing everything within its powers. The party is also trying and doing everything within its powers. Not to say the governors or the president should be moving in Molwe or the ministers should be moving in Keke Napep. No, but let there be a reciprocation of gesture on the side of the leaders to make the people realize that they are not just there to squander their resources. So the government is telling these appointees that it should not be business as usual. You must do everything to be seen, to be transparent in the way you do your things. You must do everything to be seen, to be just in the way and manner you run the affairs of your office. And I assure you that at every opportunity the party gets to do a clinic, a review on the performance of people that were elected on the platform of the party, or those who are holding positions of which were given to them via the party, that these people's conscience is drawn to the fact that whatever you do is being viewed by the people through the prism of fairness. They want to see fairness in the way you do your things. So much as I cannot speak for other governors because I am not their spokesperson, but I can tell you the governors that are in the APC are always told by the party that for God's sake, live by example. Whether they do that or they don't, you see, there is always the judgment of the people. And that judgment comes on the election day. Whatever you do, a day will come when you will stand for re-election. And depending on how you run that office, the people may give you a verdict of yes or a verdict of no.
Okay, I wanted to ask a follow-up on that. Just recently, the Chief of Staff to the President did mention that when the President removed subsidy, for instance, petrol subsidy, he was not looking at 2027 election. Even though some will look at that, in two folds. Perhaps maybe he did it without, without looking back, without, any political consideration. Others would say perhaps he did it because he didn't also know the implication of the fact that he will come back to Nigerians for a renewed mandate. Just like you mentioned, 4 years, you need another mandate. You need the revalidation, if you like, or Nigerians to have to return you. That is after 4 years tenure. Some of them perhaps are not looking at that until they do. They take decisions that affect the ordinary people without looking at the implications. But coming back to the issue at hand, the APC administration has done, or rather has, according to Nigerians, the way Nigerians are looking at it, has gotten enough in terms of, even though you might not get enough, resources are scarce and all of that. But going by what the government is, the quantum of what the government is generating via revenue collection, as it is doing, with the taxes from electricity, from telecom and all of that, and then via, savings from subsidies and fuel subsidy, electricity subsidies and all of that. The loans they are also acquiring, both domestic and foreign. Some Nigerians are, beginning to think that if these monies are judiciously utilized, Nigeria may be heading towards, looking like a small London, if that exactly is what is happening. How would you looking at the, amount of resources now in the hands of the government, how would you rate, the performance, on ground Nigerians are seeing?
Well, I don't want to be seen as someone blowing the trumpet of his party, but then it's my
verifiable facts and figures. Perhaps.
Yes, I think so far not bad. You may call it so far so good, but I don't want to say so far so good, but certainly looking at the volume of challenges and looking at the magnitude of effort put in place to confront these challenges, I think the Tinubu administration and by extension the APC-led government has done very well. Very well in the sense that for the first time in the political history of Nigeria, we have a president who is an economist and an accountant. At the same time, a politician that was tested and trusted. A politician that had done so at state level by setting the records in such a way and manner that is transforming that state into a mini Dubai today. People may say, well, these things did not happen under his time, but we have to look at the person that set or put down the foundation. It is exactly what he did in Lagos that he is beginning to replicate in Nigeria. When he started in Lagos, I remember I was a correspondent in Lagos. There was large or huge cry from the public that this man is coming with mercilessness to turn Lagos into a tax collecting ground. He is taxing the people to an unbearable level. They said the elasticity of patience was almost getting to the point of cutting. Today, Lagos is the fastest growing economy in Africa. Today, Lagos is undergoing a transformation that is unprecedented. And now, if you look at what is happening to Nigeria today, since the coming of Tinubu, you see that these are things that have not happened in the past. Why? Because, like I said, there is improvement in areas that were not improving, that were stagnated for some time. There is
in quality of life?
Quality of life, yes.
In employment generation?
Yes. You see,
in the number of people, going into poverty cycle?
No. You see, first, earlier on you talk about the complaint of the ordinary, that the ordinary is being overtaxed, as if...
In the face of cost of living crisis, that is also pushing them to the extreme.
Well, I wouldn't say pushing them to the extreme, but when you want to rock the bottle in such a way that you give every particle a level playing field, if you want to make the people of the country live a realistic lifestyle, you have to wake them up from their slumber. You have to tell them that, hey, gone are the days when you are having easy way of living. You are going into the era of realistic living, and therefore you have to tighten your belt.
When you are buying SUVs, Escalades, when you are buying jets, presidential jets, when you are pushing billions of taxpayers' money for renovation of houses.
For your information, Aliko Dangote, the richest black man on earth, had come out to say he pays more tax than the entire banking industry of Nigeria put together. All the banks of Nigeria put together, they pay less tax than what he pays. Aliko Dangote is the richest black man. Now, Aliko Dangote equally feels the pains of the tax. But then, what is Aliko Dangote doing, or what is Dangote refinery doing? As I speak to you today, Dangote refinery is selling refined products, refined petroleum in the United States of America. Dangote refinery. This is a refinery that is owned by a Nigerian. This is a refinery that was registered in Nigeria. This is a refinery that is Nigerian in name, in attitude, in character, and in everything. Which means Nigeria now has exit import of refined product is now in the list of people or countries exporting refined products.
But the last time I checked, we're still importing.
Very good. What are we importing? We are importing simply because we are not ready to meet with the terms of competition. You see, competition makes pricing easy as long as you are going to feel the pulse of other competitors. Some people don't want to buy from Dangote simply because they still think it's cheaper to get these things from outside. But leave this to the forces of the market. Leave this to the economic factors. Within a reasonable period of time, you will see that people will import because they have been given the liberty to import. The free market has made it such that anybody can go and bring from Liberia, from Cameroon, from wherever you think you can get a refined product, go and bring it and sell alongside Dangote Petroleum. By the time you bring it, and I am telling you, I can promise you from what I read and heard, from next week, the price of Dangote refined product is going to crash again. Which means these people that imported from the outside will be operating at a loss. They will just have their stock. Nobody is going to buy. Everybody will go to Dangote refinery.
Right. So is that a kind of thinking you're also pushing into agriculture? Because we need to subway into that. You know, it's part of our conversation. Now you're talking about crashing food prices. And here you are talking about allowing competition, you know, to reign. Okay, how do we reconcile this? Because in one breath, the government is, okay, ensuring there is... the market is open, is liberal, you know, people can compete. But in the other breath, government is saying, okay, crash food prices, which we all know is inimical to local production, and then allow for importation, you know. How do we reconcile this?
You see, in farming, there is a difference between farming and refining. In farming, you till the soil, plant your seeds, nature will do the rest, and you harvest. When you harvest, normally whatever you plant, you harvest a multitude of what you planted. And when you have a good season, with the mercy of nature, you have a bumper harvest. But sometimes, and I say sometimes, we have people who are farmers who believe in God, but they don't believe in the teachings or the preachings of those that taught them the religion. In other words, we have farmers that farm without mercy in their minds. You have harvested multiple of what you planted. Yes, you spend some money in seedlings, implements, fertilizer, and what have you. But whatever you spend in the preparation of the land, alongside what you harvest, you find that there is a very big margin. Now, when nature is so bountiful and so merciful that you have gotten such a bumper harvest, a person with mercy, a person with sense of compassion and feeling for his fellow human being should not be extremely ambitious as to be merciless in pricing. So this intervention by the government is not born out of wickedness. The idea of crashing the price of this farm product is not to punish the farmers, but to inject or instill in the minds of these farmers to understand that nature has not been merciless to them. Why are some of them being merciless to the ordinary man?
But are we actually looking at the realities? Because some will wonder. For instance, you also identify the fact that the farmers are also into business, and they have a chain of value addition, what they need to do to grow this food that we're talking about. In the process of it, they also had to incur costs. Cost of transportation has gone up. The prices of fertilizer has also almost doubled or tripled compared to where it was before the coming of this administration. Again, fuel that is used to do irrigation farming, for instance, and all of that has also gone up. So rather than pushing the blame to the ordinary farmers, why is the government not looking at the triggers? Fundamentally, we know the subsidy removal has affected food production, cost of transportation. The insecurity that is happening has also substantially affected food production. Again, the farm implements, the inputs, we're talking about fertilizer and all of that. Is the government also looking at the need to crash some of those, variables, rather than push the blame on the ordinary farmers?
Shafiu, if you know the volume of money, implements, and intervention that is pumped into agriculture in order to subsidize farming, you will be amazed by what the government is doing. You see, I know this because by training, I read agriculture, even though I did not graduate as an agriculturist.
Extensionist, maybe.
Right. But I read agriculture and I practiced agriculture at school level. And I know that there is a big margin between what you put in and what you get if the factors in between are favorable. And we are lucky in Nigeria to have those factors favorably on our side. We are not a country that is prone to such disasters like earthquake or massive erosions or floods that clear away farms. Only recently, yes, we have the challenge of insecurity. But this insecurity has been confronted in a way that has brought peace and succor and encouragement to the farmers. And from what we are seeing, the harvest they are getting is actually encouraging. So when you talk about whether the input or implement or what the government is helping the farmers with is commensurate with this effort to crash price, I can tell you that is by far outweighed. What the government is giving them, if they are actually going to be fair to themselves and be fair to the system and the country, they are supposed to sell at below what they are asking in the market. So it is not as if the government is not doing what it's supposed to do. In fact, the government is doing much more than is expected.
I was actually trying to look at the price of fertilizer, for instance, in 2023. MPK was around 17,000 thereabout, and the other one was around 25,000 or so. And today, farmers are talking about almost more than 50% increase, and under the watch of this administration. Again, you also acknowledge the fact that there is also insecurity, which is a fundamental factor. But then, why is also the government not looking at? Because if really, the government want to crash the prices, it is not something that can be done, or can just be done by making mere pronouncement. People are looking at the reality. In the first place, how can the government crash the price? What does it has in terms of control of the price to crash? How does it want to do this?
You see, in a capitalist economy, competition is always encouraged. And it is competition that crashes prices. Because once supply outweighs demand, price will necessarily come down. So the government is not going to send police, soldiers, or the military to the market and with whips and be telling sellers, you must sell at this price, you must sell at that price. No. What the government is going to do is to open the window of competition. If you are selling millet, maize, rice in stall A at price A, the government can open a cooperative shop in stall B and sell the same product or the same commodity at price B. And the choice is given to the buyer whether to go to stall A and buy at price A or come to stall B and buy at price B, which is cheaper. So once that stall or cooperative store that is operated by the government is having security of supply constantly, the queue will be there. People will go there and the price will crash.
So what happened to local production? We're talking about food sovereignty, food security. Do we rely on importation to be secure, in terms of our food production? One. Two, are we also now going back to the era? We've seen what happened in the past, administrations that took similar route. For instance, during Obasanjo, we've seen how, the operationalization of the open, open market agreement, the kind of AGOA, led to the killing of or wiping out of our entire textile manufacturing sector. Competition was allowed. Fabrics were brought in from China, India, and Malaysia, and the rest of them, and then they killed the local production because local producers cannot compete because the variables are not there. Electricity is not, affordable here. Cost of transportation is not. Is the government looking at all of these variables before it get into this crashing kind of policies?
But you mentioned some of the factors behind production, one of which is electricity. Depending on what you do, there is the factor of labor. Depending on what you do, there are other factors that come in. Now, it is the duty of the government to provide a conducive environment where these factors can be made available. One of the factors is electricity. Now, this government has made it a duty to see to it that in Nigeria, electricity supply is improved in a way that is going to make production easy and encouraging. So it is on that track. It is also the ambition of this government to discourage dependency on foreign imports. That is why for the first time in the political and economic history of Nigeria in a long time, Nigeria is now exporting instead of importing. It is
including
a net
the maize
exporter.
And grains that it is importing from outside the country.
Well, you see, it depends on the variety and species of what we are talking about. Yes, in the interim, in order for you to stabilize the market, you may need to import. But once you stabilize and you encourage, you provide all the needed ingredients for production to double up. You don't need to import those things you are importing in the interim. So whatever is being imported at the moment is coming in with a view to stabilizing the market and encourage people to use them as seedlings. You have seedlings with which you are going to farm, and you harvest. Whatever yield you get will be more than the seeds you use, and therefore we will move from subsistence to commercialized farming.
So our claims for being, encouraging food sovereignty or sufficiency, that means it's a lip service. Because if, for instance, you encourage importation because you want to stabilize the market, and you fail to provide, the necessary support to local farmers, for instance, you get them out of business. And you get them out of business, you rely on importation. And yet you're talking about food sovereignty. Are we really serious about what we are saying as a government?
You see, I think what we have to differentiate sovereignty and security. the ambition of the government or any government is to provide food security. Sovereignty is something else. It depends on what the people are doing in order for them to move out of subsistence. Now, if they are ready to move out of subsistence and the government is helping them to move out of subsistence,
how?
Automatically
ask how. We've seen in spite of the gap in terms of agricultural mechanization that is required, we've seen very little intervention on the part of government. I think apart from those tractors that were launched some couple of months ago, in the last two and a half years, we haven't seen such intervention, even across the country, especially the farming communities. They are still left to be subsistence.
Well, you see, maybe we are not taking cognizance of what an agency of government is doing in terms of local production and fabrication of some of the things we import, including tractors. There is an agency of government called NASENI.
Okay, I think we have a caller.
Okay.
Sorry for the interruption. It's about time allow Nigerians to also call in. Good evening. Hello, good evening. Oh, okay. Okay. So you can drop that point before we get another. Okay.
There is an agency of government called NASENI. This agency is doing wonders. Is doing wonders in terms of fabrication and construction of some of the implements we were importing before. And these things are made locally at home. And they are training and teaching farmers how to use new and innovative techniques of farming without necessarily relying on tractors. This may be by way of handheld hose and other implements that could be animal powered.
Oh, okay, we have another caller. Hello, good evening. Hello.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Who do we have on the line?
My name is Anastasia. I'm calling from Makurdi.
Great, from the farming communities of Nigeria in Makurdi. Thank you very much. It's good to hear from you. Go ahead.
Yeah. They say there's no gain without pain. Of course, the government is doing its own best, but the government best is not enough. First of all, look at the taxes that Nigerians are paying. For instance, the workers, for instance, I'm a government worker. I earn less than 200,000 in a month. I pay more than 30,000 for tax each month. And to supplement this income, we go into farming. Now, you want to farm, you go to the farm, or you want to do a farming. Let me take, for instance, I planted rice. A bag of rice we bought was for 75,000 naira. A liter of herbicide goes for 5,500. And you need like 7 to 8 liters before you could be able to cultivate a hectare or about a hectare plus land for that bag of rice. That's for the first stage. The second stage, you need to weed the farm. We use 2 types of chemicals, and those 2 types of chemicals you buy each at 5,500, and you need like 7 to 8 bottles of that. At the end of the day, now the government has crashed the prices of those commodity. Now rice is being sold as less than 70,000. At the end of the day, you have people that you ask to help you to farm. You pay those workers. You pay the workers to harvest. You pay money to transport those things from wherever you have planted.
Yes,
all this put together,
yeah, that if
you
I
will
get
see that whatever you have done would not be able to amount to the crash in prices now.
Right. I think in summary, what you're saying that you're operating at a loss, isn't it?
Sir?
In other words, you're saying that farmers are operating at a loss.
I want to tell us that the government wants to do something, but they are not doing it the right way.
Okay.
Instead, it's the masses that are suffering. They have no business suffering at all, because our commentator there is not looking at anything about the masses. Because when you're talking about Dangote is from his process, from his gains, from whatever he is doing, not from his income, not from his suffering.
Right.
Critically look at what the masses are going through.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Make your comments towards that. Don't be supporting APC. Don't be supporting the government today.
It's the APC spokesperson anyway. Okay. Thank you very much. I think you made the point. She was coming from the angle I was coming earlier, but she made it, very practical, because she is a practical farmer. You had the chain, how she arrived at what she arrived. Literally, what she's telling you is that they are operating at a loss, because if the quantum of what they spend and then the output cannot even offset it. And again, she raised also something very fundamental I wanted to raise earlier. That is what the government side looks like. You have 70,000 naira minimum wage, which cannot offset, some of these challenges we are talking about. Cannot even buy a bag of rice, for instance. How would you, respond to all of that?
Well, first, let me address her. I think if I get the name correctly,
Anastasia.
Anastasia. I think, Anastasia, what you fail to understand is that God had created you to kill pain. Anesthesia is actually supposed to be a pain reliever, and you are not living to the expectation of your name. Well, that's just on the light side.
Of the challenges.
I agree. I think she has to understand why nature created her. Nature created all of us for a reason and for a purpose, and we have to serve those reasons and purposes. Right, if we go to the issue of tax and what she's paying, she says she earns about 200,000 and she pays 30,000 or 40,000 as tax.
Let me take another caller. You also land on that. Hello, good evening. Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, who do we have on the line?
It's Shaibu Ahmed Bunkao from Toro, local government in Bauchi State.
Okay, Shaibu, very welcome. Go ahead, very quickly, please.
Yes, sir, on the issue of subsidizing or crashing food prices in Nigeria by the federal government. I think it's a welcome idea and development, but what government needs to do is to subsidize on inputs, farm inputs, like the fertilizer and the chemicals, just like the lady from Benue said. And once that is achieved, maybe food prices will definitely come down, and Nigerian farmers will have more resources to go into farming, and at the end they will have a bomber harvest.
Right.
Because farming input is the major problem faced by farmers in Nigeria.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much.
And that contributes to the hike in the prices of food items.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you for.
Right. In summary, he said that the crashing point should be crashing of fertilizer inputs and all of that. That's where the crashing should start from. Okay, let me get your take.
You see, all these theories have been practiced and tested in Nigeria, but they didn't work. Time was when a regime introduced a scheme under the central bank where a lot of money was pumped to the Rice Farmers Association of Nigeria. I think they call them Refan. Up till now, it's an issue that is being investigated by the EFCC, right? The Ankoboros. They give them lots of money by way of inputs, by way of subsidized implements, by way of fertilizer, everything. But what we received was the reverse of the expectation. In fact, it was at that time prices of rice went higher than 100,000 naira.
But why throw the baby with the bathwater? Why shouldn't the government look at it, holistically, and then address the gaps and then allow it to exist?
You see, that is what this government is doing now. It's experimenting, but not through cash donations. Right. It's experimenting by way of first making some of these things locally, and making the farmers to be less dependent on fertilizer, making the farmers to learn the art of using farmyard manure and compost. These are methods or agricultural innovations that work elsewhere and are working with some people that are practicing this, especially in the rice producing areas of Kebbi, Sokoto, and some areas. We just have to remove laziness and that attitude of getting free money from the government and the mentality that necessarily government must be the provider. Right. No, in a capitalist economy, profit is the driver. Right. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. I wish we could go on. I understand time is not on our side. Thank you very much, Bala Ibrahim. Thank you very much for talking to us on daily politics and Sunday politics, right?
Thank you very much, Suleiman. Shafiu, for inviting me.
Right. Malam Bala Ibrahim is Director of Publicity of the All Progressive Congress, that is the APC. And of course, viewers, we also appreciate you for calling and then sharing your thought with us. We hope we can do this next week. But before then, tomorrow we'll be back with another set of guests and, of course, topics on daily politics. Until then, on behalf of the team, I am Shafiu Suleiman. Many thanks for being there.